Dr. Hillman, would you talk more and speak more for those who are listening about, we'll just call it the rise of the feminine, or what's happening around that? Because something's going on there.
Yeah, so if you look, you don't have to look too far these days to find some kind of comments that there's a rising of the feminine. And to me, that means what I said earlier, which is it's the rising of the yin. We can see it in people taking to the streets. That's sort of an obvious way that the yin is rising in my mind, in the two ways that I've already mentioned. But it also is a greater awareness and a greater need for balance within individuals. And so if we talk about, there's a term that I coined in my dissertation called the yin function, which is essentially a person's ability to connect to their yin, or to their, if you want, feminine side, to make it a sort of a little bit more popular term. I stay away from that term usually because it's a loaded word and people get very worried to use language like that. So the yin function is essentially somebody's capacity for their own inner feminine capability, their ability to yield, to listen, to be nurturing, to have imagination, to face their own inner richness and these kind of things. That's a yin capacity. That's the yin function. And it's not gendered, because you have plenty of men who have a very strong yin function, and you have plenty of women who have a very non-well-developed yin function. So it has really nothing to do with gender. It has to do with our ability for those skills, as I have shown before, and those capacities is really what they are. And so the rising of the feminine means that those qualities are sought after much more. If you are a person who is particularly yang in the world, if you're particularly masculine and driven and aggressive and cut down your enemy, and you think that gives you strength, you're actually one-sided, because your yin function is not well developed. And so you're actually limping along on half the yin-yang symbol. That is a weakness in my mind. And there's a price to pay for that usually you're also lonely, usually you feel not loved, usually you feel, you're overcompensating in many ways and so forth. So what I like about the idea of the yin rising is that it gives it, because it's sort of in the air, it's like, it's there now, is that it's easier for those with a not so strong yin function, and often those are men, because they've been taught that, having feelings is a bad thing, or being nurturing is not for men, and all these kind of stereotypes that are still out there much too often. So, being in a time where the yin is rising is a time where it is easier to tap into that energy. And it's easier for men today to say, well, I'm staying at home and I'm taking care of the children, and my partner works, or things like that. So that's isn't frowned upon in the same way as it would have been. Or for women to be more assertive in their yang function and say, I'm strong, I don't have to be walked over, I can be, all those things that the Me Too movement is bringing to light, and the empowerment in the most literal sense of women. But it is so traditionally, yang roles have been masculine or male, literally male as in men, and yin has been assigned to women. That's a tremendous oversimplification and has caused a tremendous amount of pain. And we are in a different era right now. Even the fact that we no longer have two genders, we have a whole spectrum of genders. That's part of what you said before, Dr. Roman, that it's black and white isn't what black and white used to be. It's not that simple. There are now lots and lots of different colors in between. And so I'm very excited about this time, because it's easier for people to be enriched and to have the full yin-yang combination, if you want, and actually for men to speak to their feelings and to their sensitivity and to their nurturing abilities and to their imagination more than anything, rather than being very limited. And you even see this happening in businesses. The businesses recognizing that most businesses have been based sort of, if you want, on a yang model. It's a jungle out there. Kill the competition, winning at all costs. Data driven and evidence based. All those ideas are yang, and that no longer works very well. Sure, it works for a lot of businesses still, but on the whole, it is a model that is dying and that is not fit for the future, in my mind. We really need to have new language that includes yin language in businesses if we are to be successful in business, especially if we are talking about younger employees who have a much greater sense of balance between yin and yang than the older generation in my mind.
So, Dr. Hillman, in essence, what you're speaking to, it's neither black nor white nor male nor female. You seem to be speaking to a time where it's about integration and balance.
Correct. And it's also not androgynous. It's also not genderless. There are moments where all of these, it's about multiple capacities that human beings have. We're back to the archetypes, where the archetypal energies, when we think of ourselves as multiple as opposed to singular, I am not this. I have all these different parts in me that can step forward and can do things in different times. At times I need to be a nurturer. At times I need to be a warrior. It depends what situation I'm in. That's a very different model than saying, I am like this, therefore I'm not changeable. So we're not talking about typology with astrology. That's, again, where sun signs are so limiting, because they're essentially typology. If you're a Scorpio, you're this. If you're an Aries, you're that. No, we're talking about a multiplicity, a complexity. This is difficult to grasp. It's not simple. We can't label it. We can't walk around with a label on our forehead and say, I am this, because we are multiple and we have lots of different capabilities. An archetypal perspective allows us to bring forth and to express them given the situation. So we have way more, it's like we can play many more roles than a simplistic. We're not typecast or stereotyped into a particular role, which we have been doing for so long.
And I would appreciate this. It's going into a little more detail. Because as you were saying, the men are usually the warrior, the women, are more the nurturer. That's changing. But I'm seeing more of this, women have to be warriors now, or the heroine's journey is to become a warrior, which is really becoming the masculine. Anyway, can you give some, maybe advice or thoughts for women who say, now I have to lean in and become the warrior, and that's kind of upsetting the cart too.
Right. And so first I'd like to respond to the idea that we have to become anything. We don't have to become anything. What we have to do is activate or awaken the parts of us that already exist. Everyone has, in this model of the world, in this philosophy, in this belief system, everyone has already within them 10 archetypes. They are powerful, they are able, and they're acting out in some way, shape, or form. If you don't like it or repress it because you were told that girls don't show their teeth, or only when they're smiling, or that men don't cry, or whatever the lines were that have allowed you to repress or to sort of hide a certain part of yourself because that wasn't valued in the way you were raised or in your culture or whatever, then it doesn't mean it's not there. It's still there. Very often, these parts that we have repressed or hidden come up as someone we look for in the world. Extremely common. A classic example is somebody who is not comfortable with their warrior, marries somebody who's very aggressive and treats them badly. Extremely common. Anybody who's in the helping professions can give you umpteen examples of how that works. So these dynamics are well known. I'm giving them an archetypal explanation. In addition, so it's not about becoming something or overplaying something else. It's recognizing that we all have all of these parts in them. So if a woman becomes a man or a man becomes a woman, in the sense that we're now going to act like that, because I think that's what the warrior is, that's what the nurturer is, that's an extremely limited view of the archetype. There are as many ways to express the warrior as there are people in the world. There's not a formula that says, here's what a warrior looks like. If you have an archetypal sensibility, you can recognize the warrior no matter where you go in the world, and you can be curious about how this warrior is expressing herself or himself in the culture, in the person, or in the art, or in the food that you are enjoying in a foreign place that you've never been to. That's the archetypal eye. That's a rich way of living. And it starts to bring us together, because we start to see, we have much more in common than we have separate, because what we have in common is that we all have this inner archetypal richness that we can recognize in each other. So to me, it's not about, hey, I finally found my power. It's like, where has this been in my life all the time? Because that warrior has been there. It might have been in an abusive spouse. It might have been in an angry child. It might have been in a parent who put me down. But the archetype has been present in your life. So be more curious about where shine some light on where that has been a dark spot for you that you haven't been able to see. So therefore, dark in the sense that it's been in the shadows. Bring that forward, and then decide how you want to live it. We all have license to live all 10 archetypes however we want. We have choice for that.